conversation, my energy is going to be rising, because
Right.
that's what happens when we just talk about anything. We chit chat about anything. My energy starts rising. So, like, how are you doing?
Right. So sorry about that, y'all. Just making sure that it was playing back on YouTube. And so
Well, how are you
I
feeling though? I
I'm
want to check in with you.
yeah, so I'm good. So just caveat, disclaimer. My voice is a little raspy. I did not want to cancel it. I woke up this morning realizing, oh, I don't really have a voice. And it's because me and my son went to Disneyland yesterday, and I should have brought him. Thank you, everybody. We reached 9,000 subscribers on my YouTube channel, so I thought it would be fun to do the whole little congratulatory thing on the buttons.
Yeah.
And then my son had reached 1,000 views for his little YouTube channel, and
Oh,
so I thought I feel like we don't celebrate like all of the accolades that we do behind the scenes. And
yes.
because it was a mom and Sunday at Disneyland, we screamed, we had a good time, and then we got up out of there because it's grad night in Southern California. So when I tell you these high school kids are taking over,
Yes.
we had to go. We had to go.
Yes.
But I'm doing good. I'm just recovering.
Understood. Well, we don't have to chat for long, but we always gonna chat. So
Yeah. So want to put everybody up to speed. And so I know that me and Dr. Roche and then myself solo has been going live for the last couple of days. Just really feeling the flow of where the conversation is going. And
Mhm.
so to put people up to speed, if this is your first time watching us together in the last 7 days, is that we did a first video last Friday, last live stream, and that one had a lot of discussion. That
Mhm.
led to me and Dr. Roche doing another conversation just on mental health, because if we have not forgot, it is still Mental Health Awareness Month. So
Yes.
we were talking about money mindset, especially in the Black community, and what that looks like. So go check out that video. Then I started noticing there was a trend of questions that were really not being addressed, or I just feel like I can't address them the way that I would like to in the comments. They need to be talked out. So I did a whole Mythbusters. That by far probably was the funnest slideshow that I had done with the public outside of therapists to educate people on what's factual and what's not. And so what we're going to do today, y'all, is we're going to circle back to some of those conversations, and we're going to talk to y'all like we on FaceTime. Okay. So if you have questions or comments, or you just want to drop your stuff in the comment box, please do so. We are checking that out, and we will pull your question on screen, and we will get to as many as we can. All right.
Yes.
So, Dr. Roche, did you want to say anything before we get started about like why we decided to go live today?
Yeah, I mean, I like to intro us, you know what I mean? So, of course, those who haven't seen me before, I'm Dr. Roche Brown. I am also known as the Doctor of Rethinking, because I help people to remix their thinking so they can make money, they can manage their money, and they can multiply their money. I am a financial psychologist from deep East Oakland. Like what? Okay. Like, know where I'm from, right? You know what I'm saying? So I came out of the hood to success. All right. And so I actually have a earned doctorate degree, right? I am also licensed. I
Oh
know
my
where my
God.
dissertation is located, and I have a whole lot of people who can verify it. So that is me. And of course, Dr. TK, she's going to give you her intro as well. But Dr. TK and I both went to graduate school together. And I am really big on, it's so important, like who you connect yourself with, right? I often say you unconsciously take on the pace of those that are around you, right? I'll say that again.
Mhm.
You unconsciously take on the pace of those that are around you. And so because Dr. TK was my like good friend, like we were besties in grad school, and still, right? We were besties in grad school, because she was a person who was always like, girl, what's your dissertation gonna be about? I'm like, girl, it's the first year. Like, we don't even have to do that for like a couple of years, right?
Let's go ahead and act like this is one of our events. Go ahead and let's break down pace, and then
Yes.
I'll circle back and do my intro, because I think that's very important as in terms of like psychoeducation for the public, because we
Yes.
always here to stimulate your minds. Okay.
Yes, definitely. So unconsciously taking on the pace. Let's think of an example, right? Say you're going out and you're walking with somebody, and you guys are taking a walk together, and that person is walking really fast. And you find yourself walking fast, your legs even hurting because you're trying to keep up with their pace, right? Well, on the other side of that, what if you're with somebody who's maybe older, right? Maybe you're with like your grandmother and you're taking a walk with her, and you will unconsciously, meaning out of your awareness, take on the pace of that person, right? So you'll take on the pace of your grandmother in order to maintain connection, right? And so what's so important about that is that we can see that physically in our lives. Guess what? We can see that emotionally, right? We can see that spiritually. We can see that financially, right? We can see that psychologically, mentally. So if you're around a lot of people who are like struggling, like, always bringing the drama, always having negativity around you, around them, depressed or anxious, guess what? You'll unconsciously take on their pace, right? But if you're around somebody who's a go-getter, who's accomplishing things, right? Dr. TK said she was the first one in our class to complete her dissertation. Guess what? Who was the second? Don't play. Don't act like you don't know, right? I was right behind her, right? So we were the first in our class to get dissertations completed, first in our class to get our licenses completed. So who you're around really matters because it'll dictate how fast you move within your life. Right. So that is one of those things. But, let me just give a quick intro to my bestie, Dr. TK, right? The #1 therapist business coach. Not only is she a doctor, however, she's also been able to, moreover, right? I feel like it's like moreover to add extra to it, right? She also helps other therapists get their lives, private practices, group practices together as well. But she can give you an intro as well.
So, hey, everybody, if you're just joining us, apologize in advance for my little raspy voice. But nevertheless, my name is Dr. TK, short for Dr. Takesha Jackson-Rudd. And I'm a clinical psychologist. I'm also a therapist, business coach, mentor to help therapists be able to not just have a profitable business, but I'm really big on, and I'm sure you can sense that in my energy from those other videos when what y'all call online went off. I really believe in an abundant lifestyle. I really believe that people should be able, especially people of color and therapists of color who give to people all the time. You should be able to have an abundant life, a wealthy life. And we're not just talking about money. We're talking about having the life that you deserve. So what I am going to do, I grabbed this off the wall because even though I love my aesthetics, you probably can't see my whole office unless you've been on some of my other videos. I like everything to be pretty, right? And I like things, right? I like flowers. But you know what I also like that my grandmother got framed for me? You see this?
Whoop, whoop, right? Verified.
Do you see how
certified,
big
earned.
Do you see how big this is? Yes, I got it plated. Okay, my grandmother was like, no, you're going to put it on the wall. And I said, you're right, Dorothy. And so she paid when I did my bachelor's and master's. That's over there it's on the far wall. We have those in a big, what is this, 20 by 24 for Michael's. Okay. And those two are framed from bachelor's to master's. And then we also have the doctorate, right? Yes. Okay. You should have it readily available along with your license. But moving on. Again. So I'm from Compton.
Let me just be extra since I'm about to put these on.
You got a collage. Yes.
Look it. I got a picture with me with the dissertation. Okay. And then we keep on going. What? There goes my license. It's legit.
Oh my gosh.
It's legit.
They like, these ladies got jokes.
It's legit.
All right. So we've done a brief introduction. Y'all will learn more about us as we start to talk. Believe that. Okay.
Oh, but also together we call ourselves the Beautiful Black Psychologists. Yes. Okay. Beautiful BBP. We've been using it since we've been in grad school before it was even a thing called branding and influencing. Okay. Yeah. We've been calling each other my BBP, right? My Beautiful Black Psychologists. And I see a couple of those in the chat as well, right? Yeah. So there's some beautiful Black psychologists that are out here. Okay.
Yeah. So we're going to get into it. I'm going to do something a little bit different because it seems like people like to look at whatever we're talking about on the screen, like briefly. So what I'm going to do as we introduce the discussion topic, because we are going to talk about the comments that y'all put up. And then we're also specifically going to address how do you as a professional, we know why we're doing the air quotes here. How are we as professionals supposed to present ourselves in the limelight when we're being attacked? Okay. Mm-hmm. When things are coming up. So I'm going to put this first one, let me see, on the screen.
Yeah, we got questions, y'all.
Okay. All right. Can y'all see that? Put a 1 in the chat box. I like to treat this like I'm doing a class or something.
Yes.
All right. So this is the first one, trusting providers. Okay. So what I did is I pulled out some of the comments or just the general theme. And so a lot of people said like cap culture. So let's talk about trusting providers and what this situation that is not dying down in the news cycle has created for being able to trust providers. And let's go a little bit deeper, honestly, being able to trust providers of color. So this, some people said cap culture. Some people said anyone can claim anything, not knowing who's legit. Now we'll talk about that in terms of how you show up online, follower count, all of that stuff matters in terms of people trusting. And also people are asking why platforms do not vet these individuals. So where do you want to start off with that conversation, Dr. Roche, in terms of what this has created in terms of a deeper trust recession for people to look at providers?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're in a world of influencing, right? And so influencing is a business, right? It's about marketing things, and also it's really about like the illusion of things, right? So when people are posting on social media, they are posting like what makes them look good. Like that's what you're able to see is what makes them look good. They don't tell you all the bad, right? Which means that, just because you have a high follower account, you can have a high follower account for doing negative things, right? And being, and not doing something that's positive. We can see people doing crazy videos and they have a high follower. We also know this, and we're very aware of this, that people can pay for followers. Guess what? That happens, right? When you're understanding marketing, you have a marketing budget for your business, you may even potentially pay for followers, pay for views, pay for likes. So things are not, you can't just, take things at face value when it comes to social media, right? It makes sense that you should vet people. However, I will say this, like when, and looking at other, like, places that she's been on their podcast, right? I would say that people go where the energy is, right? Where the trend is, where the motion is, right? And so a lot of people will just, not even worry about vetting, especially if somebody presents well, right? So in the initial level of things, she's presenting that. I mean, I know that I've been on multiple like YouTube channels and different things, and nobody ever said, present your dissertation, present your degree, present your license. Nobody's ever asked me that either. They just trusted me, right? Based on what they heard about me in the streets, And so I do feel like there needs to be a shift into making sure that you're vetting people, right? However, like that wasn't the culture even with us. You know what I mean? Like nobody really asked for those kinds of things unless it's necessary, right? If it's necessary for a job, necessary to become a professor, like those are those things, like necessary for licensure. I mean, for insurance or something like that. That's the only time you actually have to present it. But I think that it requires a shift. A shift must happen into starting to vet people who have influence over other people.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I talked about when I did like a conversation around the honorary doctorate degree is me and the community people who showed up during that live stream. We're talking about how usually you want to know when these people are on these platforms, are they being called on the platform for education or entertainment? Or a mixture of both, and then expertise is intertwined in there. That's like the third E. But most of the time when people are brought on, even if like for her, she was doing her book tour and things like that, the way that the journalism shows up in terms of how they ask questions reminds me of even when I went to college. I don't know how many of y'all have explored different college classes in undergrad during your GEs. And one of them that I was really interested in, because I love to write. I've always been a writer, poetry, all that kind of thing. And I took communications. And I realized in that moment I didn't like journalism because it only focused on, what is it, blood, sweat, and tears. That's what it was focused on. That's what the teacher told us of how we needed to write. So when you think about, well, why isn't anyone vetting her? Well, is she applying for a professor, position? Or is she applying to come onto a platform to, pour into their audience with however they want to present her? But also they are entertaining and they may put people on blast. Clearly, we have seen that over the last 7 days, because the more and more, unfortunately, people ask questions, the deeper this individual is putting themselves into a deeper hole. Because I believe that you can only keep up with things that are not documented. That's why we made the joke of like, we got all these papers. You can't keep up with something like that if you're making it up, potentially off the top of your head. But I'm glad that you mentioned like followership, because this day and age, and I feel really bad for our kids, this day and age, popularity is based on
Yeah.
what we consider the 1%. This is what we know in the business arena, marketing and branding. If you know anything about social media and you show up on social media, you only show people 1% of your life, even though y'all really, like, people really think that they know me, right? But you may be looking at my life a year later, a weekend later, right? And so
True.
it's unfortunate that this way that social media and online has been perceived is that anybody who comes online and has a big following, or better yet, the fact that they made it to the platform, we
Mhm.
should automatically trust them. And what this has done personally to me has just shed a light on how
Yeah.
dangerous that can be for platforms. And if I were working on those platforms behind the scenes, or one of the people that had the mic was my brother, I will pull that person to the side so quick after this situation
Yes.
plus others and say, when is enough enough? Because somebody gonna tank your reputation.
Yeah, yeah, no, I'm with you. You know what I'm saying? Like that. So I look at the positive, right? And that's just because my slant on life is like, oh, what else can I see that's also happening? And I love the fact that we on the stage out here. You know what I'm saying? Therapists, psychologists, licensed Black professionals. We're it has brought us up, right? It was a negative thing that happened, but what it did is that it helps the community learn what to ask,
Yeah,
right?
that's good.
Sometimes we don't even know what to ask. You know what I mean? And so we don't even know to ask for dissertations, right? We didn't know to ask for licensure. We didn't even know how to go look for somebody's
Mhm.
license. But this topic, over the last, 7 days, has created that. It's created people to start paying attention, right? To
Yes.
do your own verification of what's necessary, and so I think that's important, and that came out of this situation. So sorry to her, but it put us up on the stage. Let's go. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Like,
Yes.
we already were doing the work, but I think that the world is all about, like, kind of even negative attention. And so it brought us to light, as
Yeah.
well, those who are real true about it and have, like, the credentials and everything to show for it. So I think that's really interesting. I want to say something. I don't know
Go
if we
ahead.
go into the honorary doctorate
Hold
degree
on, we're
just
gonna go,
yet.
we're gonna go to it. Hold on to it. Hold
Okay,
on.
okay. I'm gonna hold on to
Yeah.
it. And I got one other little thing, but I can hold
Okay.
on. Hold on.
All right. So well, let's keep the conversation going. All right. And
Okay.
y'all drop y'all comments or questions in the chat box. And so let's address this. This has come up a little bit, um,
Yeah.
after the
But
last
as you're
session.
doing that, I would say, like, now I think influencers, because influencers or podcast hosts are not journalists,
Mhm.
right? Like, they are in some level, you know what I mean? But they're not, on like a news platform. You can go ahead and put it up, but they're
Okay.
not on like a serious, like, news platform, where they are even being checked on what they're saying. All of everything that they're doing is all their influence and their opinion.
Opinionated. It's their
Yes,
opinion.
all opinionated. So why would they even consider to even vet somebody?
Mhm.
Now the people who are like legit journalists, that are out there, those are like, hey, if you're on a news station, why didn't you vet that person? That makes
Mhm.
sense because you have more responsibility to the public. An influencer has really no responsibility to the public. People just choose to believe them or not believe them.
Right.
But when it does come to actual news stations, they need to be making sure they're vetting people. But I do believe that people who do have influence in podcasts now will shift to make sure that they're vetting, because
Mhm.
it makes you look bad as well if you had somebody on there who wasn't, telling the truth.
Yeah.
Um,
And let's
so
clarify this too, because you said that, because this
yeah.
has come up multiple times, probably like two handfuls, not a lot. It comes up more on Instagram.
Mhm.
Is when we're talking about these conversations and we bring the conversation to the surface, because it ain't like it ain't coming to the light, but we're
Right.
opening up the conversation. We are basing this off of factual information, which is
Yeah.
why, we pull things from our ethics code. We pull
Mhm.
things from what does the state say about what providers need to have in order to be
Yeah.
able to use words like therapist,
Mhm.
therapy, my patient, because that has been flowing. We're
Yes.
gonna come back
Yes.
to that. But there is even certain dialect that or dialogue that we use to describe mental health services that are
Right.
not ethical and or they are illegal. Okay. But I
Yes.
just wanted
Yes.
to state that before we continue. These
Yeah.
are factual things that me and Dr. Roche are not opinionated on. This is
Right.
just what it is,
Right. Exactly.
All right. So let's bring this one up because, of course, we went here. Okay. So Argosy University. So I've seen two different things, more from the positive, 10% from the negative. The positive is there are many like us, real graduates that went to this school all across the country. It wasn't just one campus in California. And there's been certain years that people have been publishing their graduation years, like ours was 2009, right? Which is a long time ago. And it was it's an accredited university, but people were speaking up from like class of 2005, class of 2010, San Francisco Bay Area, Argosy, and they're tired of the school being dragged through the mud. Okay. So first things first, when a school shuts down, and I talked about this on that other myth versus verdict, in fact. Okay. When a school shuts down, when that school shut down, it was financial. It was not academic. I want to be clear about that. It did not shut down because they were not producing credible mental health providers. And there were way other degrees other than mental health, by the way. They had a full bachelor's, which I taught in, and master's and doctoral program. It was just a for-profit school. And I personally, because we've worked in the system, I started to see the change, but I don't know all the details, when there was an exchange of ownership. Like one company outbought the other company, and I kid you not, it just went downhill in like 3 years, right? But at the end of the day, I want to clear that up and give Argosy graduates a voice, or those who could not graduate and transfer somewhere else, because the school did not shut down because it was not a good, relevant school. And we have very good, well-known professors, because the word has been creeping around, degree mill, right? And I find it interesting. This is my personal opinion. It's funny how people are saying degree mill, but when I go to your page, you don't have a degree. That's bars right there. Like that's real stuff right there. But let me just say this, and then I'm gonna turn the mic over to Dr. Roche. Let's just say someone says, okay, it's a degree mill. It's a whole lot of people graduating. It's like one of these for-profit, just admit everybody. Well, only a select few actually graduate. So even if everybody was able to get into school, everybody named mama, only a handful of people, literally for our cohort, a literal handful, was actually able to not just finish the dissertation, but also a handful of us were able to complete our internship in 4 years, working full time with the inability to work at a job, which means the girl was hustling. And then we still were able to walk across the stage, and not 6 years, not 10 years, no shade, but 4. Then on top of that, if I intertwine looking at my history, and I could speak for myself, I was very a go-getter, like Dr. Roche said. I still am that person. So because I know myself very well, when we had to apply for a practicum internship for a degree mill, why is it that all of these places in California that has nothing to do with Argosy, that's tied to UC Berkeley and all these big schools, why is it that I got 15 interviews and got offered 15 spots? That's unheard of for a practicum. Then to move forward, I applied for a very rigorous process to go to an internship. We wake up at 4 a.m. in the morning, like medical school, and get matched. Some people did not get matched. Our school had a very high match rate for all across the country. We're talking about University of Miami hospitals, New York hospital. We're not talking about just no clinic outside of Compton and South Central and Oakland. Okay. We got matched. And then on top of that, we graduate, get our degree, and we get very good jobs. We get licensed. And then we're able to open up businesses and be able to still show up and stand up from the hood and be able to say, we're licensed providers and we're good at what we do. That's not a degree mill.
I mean, I'm with you, right? You know what I'm saying? Because same. Like we had our actual professors, just thinking about the professors, our professors had their degrees, right? Of course. But on top of that, they were in practice, right? They were business owners. They were directors of clinical training at certain places. They brought in tons of their own experience as well as their education to be able to teach us. And just like Dr. TK said, like a lot of us, we were able to get licensed once we left that school. We were able to qualify for practicum sites and internship sites. If we did not know anything, best believe that's when it would have shown up. It would have shown up in our inability, right, to actually get into practicums, inability to get into internships, right, inability to have a job, inability to get licensed, because you understand, like, there's people who do get out of school and they can't, even pass the licensing exam. Like, so there's all kinds of things that were there. And I mean, I've worked in so many different fields, and Dr. TK can tell you, all that she's done as well, right? But I worked at like top places. I worked in the prison system, right? She worked in the juvenile hall system, right? Worked for like she worked for county. I work for Kaiser, which is a big top hospital
Can you
where
talk
I've been a
about the
licensed.
prison just so that people can understand on a state level as a contractor, a degree mill can't produce that.
Can't produce that. Like, I mean, keep in mind, I was in a position where they reached out to me, so they knew my degree, knew I had been licensed. You have to be licensed for 5 years before even getting into the system of doing that, and I was a part of that. And I got trained to go into the prison system. We're talking about San Quentin. Y'all know about that. Y'all may have heard of Folsom, right? Vacaville State Prison, like, it's California Men's Colony. So I went to those places to do evaluations that were so serious and legal oriented that I could get subpoenaed based on whatever I have said. So these were like serious places that I worked at. And then on top of that, like I say, Kaiser is a very big, reputable like place. And so they don't just accept anybody. I know they need to have more of somebody's. I understand that part, but they don't just just invite anybody to even work there or allow people to work there. I worked in, of course, we were professors, we were at our schools, but they didn't accept everybody else to become a professor at the school either. So everybody, even the rigorous process of becoming a professor, you present your transcripts, you present your degree, but you also have to do a mock session of teaching in front of seasoned educators before you can even become a professor. It's a process throughout all of this, and we were highly trained, with our degree, our education, but also in all the practicums that we were there. So Argosy is legit. Right. So, if you are Argosy graduate, say yes, baby, up in the chat. You know what I'm saying? Like, grad over here, because I know that there was a ton of them the last time that were saying, and on top of that, Argosy was a huge school. I mean, it had multiple campuses. We're talking about California. We were in the Bay Area. I don't know which one she was referencing, but there is also one in the Southern California area. But there were across the whole entire country, multiple Argosy universities. It was a top, place. And like what Dr. TK was saying, I can recall, and she better with all the numbers, but it was like 60 of us when we first started. It was a ton of people who
Yes, let
like
me tell you the
entered into
number.
the program.
Yes.
And like by the time we were actually complete, especially in the 4 years, right? Most people do not complete their degree in 4 years. We were fortunate to be amongst those people. But oftentimes, like I say, dissertation can take longer than just a year, depending on what your discipline and what was going on for you. Also, licensing, getting the hours. Your pre-doc hours can take longer than what you were expecting. Your postdoc hours can take longer than what you were expecting. So to be done in like 4 years was like a big deal for us. That we were able to do those things. And that was coming from the education that we were given at Argosy.
Yeah. And I just want to I like somebody said cap. So I'm like, let's cap this off.
Yeah.
The fact that we are on here dropping not names of people that we've worked with, but we're dropping hours and collection of experience and why this is credibility for the mental health field. I'm just talking to other mental health providers. Those are the things that I want you to start dropping online. Like we did something earlier, was it late last year? We did what's called like a brag challenge. And this was a struggle for therapists, right? I do things that are very unorthodox for therapists and coaching because of mindset, right? And a lot of them, they said, I had a hard time doing it or being consistent because what I required them to do is go online every day for 7 days straight. It might have been 14, but 7 days for sure. And they had to go brag on themselves. And it's not being cocky. It's like do a reintroduction video and then tell people about who you are. Because a lot of people don't understand all these acronyms. That's number one. Maybe a second video is talking about what you do at your job or in your business, or talk about your collection of experience. But I bring this up because as I'm watching all of these reaction videos, of course, they're pulling out the worst of the worst, clips. But the clips that keep coming up in terms of why people are having a problem where it feels like it's jabbing you, and I do too, is it's name dropping of who a person has worked with versus I would have loved for the person to be able to talk about what have they helped that person do versus who I've worked with. That goes way longer than just dropping names. You know what I'm saying?
And then on top of that, the names that were dropped were sessions, right? That they were called. I mean, whatever, like, they were interviews. However, like in those particular sessions that she was describing, we know that, it shouldn't have been only your whole work should not have only happened in the last couple of years. You know what I'm saying? So the only sessions that you're referencing are sessions that since you've been on the, like, the influencer meal, right? Like, what happened to all the sessions that you would have done 10 years ago, 15 years ago? What happened to those? Like, I feel like those are the people that really are like your real clients. And then these people weren't clients. We're talking
Speak on
about,
that, please. Speak on that.
right. They were like one-offs. They were clearly interviews that were happening. Maybe they had some issues. Maybe she was addressing their issues, but she had one-offs, right? One-off. We even know that one session is not going to transform anything. We can look at her top session that really made her, like, kind of blow up. For the most part, we don't see no changes in him. Like, let's be real. You know what I mean? Like, he still is who he is. Like, so, like, there was no continuing work that happened after that. So I was like, this wasn't like no, like, real actual sessions. I'm not saying she could not have been helpful. People can be helpful. We can be helpful in so many different areas, right? I can walk a grandmother across the street. That's helpful, right? People are helpful. Doesn't mean that they're therapeutic, right? And they're actual therapists, And so I feel like she should not have used those as like something that was supposed to make us feel better. That she actually had authority and credibility because she had been on platforms that can be paid for. Right. I don't even know why you were on those platforms. We don't know the background, but with that. So you could have paid to even get on those platforms. If you got enough money, you can get on stuff.
And
so
the only reason we know that is because we've been in circles. We've been in 5-figure, 6-figure masterminds in which, like, as a client, as a customer, under marketing and branding. Me and Dr. Roche have been doing this thing for a long time, and we invested in our business because they don't teach us this stuff in grad school. And they told us, one of our first coaches said, we had to pay him to get on his stage, and he helped us write the book that we would have to talk about on the stage. And I'm like, what? But if we want to get on the stage and get publicity, because we got to start from somewhere, we're going to pay the $1,000, $5,000, $10,000. Not saying that she did that, but I'm educating everyone. When you see people on these platforms, as Dr. Roche said, you will probably never know unless you're in their inner circle, were they called or did they have to pay? And either way is fine. But you need to represent yourself in what you do in the field you are talking about correctly.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So this actually goes into, we already like jumped the gun with talking about the third part, which is the impact. It had an impact on all people, but because of the way social psychology works and we're attracted to those who look like us, act like us, or are from places like us, I know for myself as being a business owner and therapist, I tend to attract more people of color, right? Or Black people. And so a lot of people talked about the impact on Black people seeking therapy. And this is what was said in all the comments. There were a lot of concerns about misinformation, hurting trust in the field, the whole field of mental health, like one issue compounded on other things that have happened in the past. Of course, we know from other people. This was the icing on the cake. And multiple people said that they are trying to decide, this hurt, whether or not they should even enter into the field.
Oh, wow.
Because of this, like, that hurt, like, as like I said, like a coach, but also us as being psychologists, clinical supervisors, always loving to carve out a certain amount of hours per year to give back for free, to go talk to students, to go talk to even kids about what mental health is for them, but also how they can go into the mental health field. But that hurt from the provider perspective, but also the highlight of people are now becoming more mistrustful again to the mental health field. So I wanted to open up that conversation with what is your perspective on how this is hurting Black people to seek mental health?
Yeah, I mean, to see that information, like, that is extremely hurtful, right? So if you are interested in, becoming a psychologist or therapist, reach out to a real legit therapist, right? Go check their license and make sure and go talk to them, about what that process really was. Don't allow this to color your lens on, like, who you're supposed to be and who you're called to be. We talk about being wounded healers, right? I feel like we all, in a lot of ways, we're called to this work when it comes down to therapy. Now, we had to put in work to make sure that we actually can do the work, but I feel like, somewhat you're already a part of you is already connected to it when you decide to become a therapist. And so that is like really hurtful. I feel like in the Black community, we always have had a lot of mistrust when it comes down to medical field overall, right? Based on real legit reasons as to why we should have, those kind of feelings. And I feel like with the mental health, people have even taken longer to start to understand that, right? Like, back in the day, I can even recall when we first started. So we're not even talking like, super years. We're talking about within our lifetime. I can see the shift of where people still had a lot of like, trust issues with mental health when we first started. Like it was people were like, we go talk to Jesus. I go to church. What are you talking about? They would not be trying to go to a therapist, and definitely in the field, it's still not enough of us in the field. And so now, we go into the field where we're from the community, the inner city, and we have our degrees, right? So we are relatable, but we also are knowledgeable at the same time. And I think we've shifted a lot of people's dynamics. I feel like we've shifted things. I used to be on a radio show that was on iHeart Radio, integrating spirituality and mental health, being on there with my pastor, right, was like a way to kind of bring that down and demystify, some of the areas of going to a therapist, right? Understanding that it doesn't mean that you're crazy, that we all have mental health and that we all need to get, support at certain times in our lives. Particularly, I know Dr. TK is really big on like PTSD in the hood, right? What we understand about trauma, when you're living in trauma, it's so familiar to you, you don't even know something's wrong. Right? You don't even know something's wrong. But because we come from trauma, we come from the hood, we have similar anxiety experiences, from those areas, we're able to say, hey, no, that wasn't right. Like there's a different way to do these things. And so we had to change that and shift that. And I feel like, over time, I have definitely seen it become better, right? We worked in, just even to think about where we used to work, we worked at Richmond High School, Kennedy High School. I worked in Oakland at like Fremont High, like in the inner city as well, where people would have never wanted, even kids would have never wanted to go to therapy. But we shifted dynamics, right? Everybody was trying to come to therapy after we were on campus. We looked like the kids, we were so young, right? But people were like, oh, this is fun. This is interesting to be around therapists. Oh, wow, I did need to talk about these things. So we put in a lot of work to shift that, so it would be definitely disappointing if we fall back, a couple of steps in people starting to go to therapy. And so I hope that, with all the work that, of course we're doing, but I also see other like, licensed therapists that are putting information out there. I hope that we can, make sure that that doesn't happen, that we fall back forward, right? We press forward instead of fall back, would be, my hope and my desire, during this time.
Yeah. And let me just say this. If you do want me to do a PTSD in the hood, just put hood in the comment box, y'all, and I will bring it because it could be a multi-series.
Yes.
I still got this book written on my phone. I just have not published it. I wrote it when we used to be in Craig's program. That was crazy. Yeah. But as you were talking, I write down notes, and I'm writing down like all of the instances when I think you were 21, I was 25, and like thinking about all the times that we were challenged by clients, because like we said, we work with teenagers, but when you work with kids, you also work with their systems. You also work with all of their caregivers and or parents, churches, and all the things in between, and the schools. And I recall, of course, multiple times, but one that stood out, we were taught in school by OG professors who still, to a degree, practiced separation. Don't tell people about your history. And we know that that is not the era that we live in now. So we had to put our supervisors on game, like, especially because some of y'all, meaning we were talking to them, some of the supervisors had never even stepped foot on campus, but go tell us how to do therapy with those kids on those campuses. And we were like, we in a bungalow in a parking lot, and excuse my language, a drive-by shooting just happened across the street. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I remember in one instance, it was a 18-year-old boy. and technically he's an adult, but he's in high school. And on 2 occasions, one was open house, which this led to our dissertation topics, by the way.
Yeah.
Mine was on parental involvement, Dr. O'Shea with Black kids. Dr. O'Shea's was on second parenting, parenting the second time around with Black grandparents raising their grandchildren. So I remember it was open house. And I noticed that there was a lack of Black parents, but it was nothing shy of brown parents. It was a predominantly Black and brown school. And I was a little hurt, but when I look back, I'm like, well, did my mom go to open house when I went to high school? No. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm like, it's not abnormal, but us knowing what these kids are about to walk into with real life happening, we need the parents to be more supportive. And if these kids are being referred by behavioral problems, quote unquote, or a lot of them start seeking us out, we want to have the parents involved. So that's how my dissertation came about. So moving long story short, I did not disclose that I was from Compton, but what the kids started noticing when they were talking to me and Dr. Roche, and Dr. Roche's from the Bay, I'm from LA. That's kind of like how we introduce it. Our slang language from, if you're not familiar with California, I swear it is 2 different states.
Yes.
Our slang terminology is not just different from the generations, it's very different even within gang culture. I'm not from gang. I'm just saying like in LA. Okay, because I feel like that. But from gang culture, even language is different from up there down here.
Yeah.
So eventually, I end up telling one of the kids for relatability purposes. And during the open house, the mom was like, "Oh, you look a little young. I thought you was I thought you was somebody dating my son." And I'm like, "Lady, I'm 25."
Right.
And she was like, "But my son is 18 and you look his age." I said, "Black don't crack." She laughed. And I'm like, "Thank you." But that was like our introduction to mental health, with people being very standoffish, but also doing a lot of questioning about our ability to do our job. Right. Yeah. So after I talked to her a little bit and I was able to talk the game, because that's the thing. I encourage people all the time to interview providers, especially parents. But we as Black people have to hop over so many freaking hurdles because of the lack of mistrust. And again, I'm gonna speak about the backlash that this individual is doing online with people asking questions. But me and Dr. Roche have professionalism. And we know that typically when people are asking questions like this, it's coming from a place of distrust. Yes. So we don't mind showing the proof or answering the question just to move it along. Right.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So
I would talk about, just because you were talking about your experience, but I can recall when I first started with the grandma who was raising her grandson. Okay. And, so they were all excited. My supervisor said, like, you should work with this young man. I come in, it's like a family session with him and the grandma. And she looked at me because I'm a baby. Baby, you ain't got no life experience. What you gonna do? How you gonna help him out? Like, and all of that. And I remember, like, I was nervous, and I'm not gonna lie, because you can't speak, to other older generations, just any old kind of way, right? And I think even my fear could have allowed me to be defensive, right? I think sometimes you can have a fear response that makes you defensive. But I remember saying to her, like, my job is not to teach you parenting, right? Right. And my job is not necessarily to connect with you. My job is to be able to connect with him. And I was like, and I'm more relatable to him, and I'm going to be able to teach him communication skills and how to express his emotions, which you're unable to get to in him. Right. Like, so I bring something of value to this situation, and in that moment, the lady started crying. I was like, "Oh, I got you." I used to feel like we had like a little dart. Gotcha. You know what I'm saying? Like, she started crying, and I was like, I made it, but it's like the work that we were able to do, but we had to fight through generational understanding of things, right? Cultural understanding of things, spiritual understanding of things, right? We have to like fight through that in order to get our people in our community seen, right? And to get them the support that they actually need.
Yeah. So as you were talking, I'm thinking about the example. I'm gonna loop back to it, but I want everybody, if you got a pen and paper, write down like the benefit of therapists or healers or providers self-disclosing, right? Yeah. Again, there were 2 levels. We were first taught to never disclose. That was like old school 18th century, right?
Right.
Over time, we have learned how to, we have learned how to only disclose if it is in the best interest of the client. That is what we're taught ethically. Okay.
Yeah.
So when I see this individual online talking about their lived experience and why they do what they do, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with sharing your lived experience, but if it's coming off as though we can't tell who's the provider and who's the client, it becomes a very confusing situation. And you should be using disclosure. Honestly, we use it as providers to help someone feel more comfortable and more safe to
Right.
open up so that they don't feel like they're alone. Just don't lie and don't
Right.
fake it. So that same young man that I was talking about, he was
Yeah.
actually going on Christmas break coming down to LA.
Mhm.
And up in North, they don't go by colors in terms of hoods. They
Yeah.
do, but the Hispanic gangs or whatever.
More
So,
terms. Yeah.
yeah, so I indirectly, without telling him where I lived at or where I grew up at, he just knew I was from Southern California. So he was like, I said, oh, well, what are you wearing? Y'all on Christmas break? You know what I'm saying? So I said, where you going to be staying at? He said, I'm staying with a family member. I said, where? What's the cross streets? And he was like, why are you asking me all this? I said, just answer the question. So he
Yeah.
was like, oh, somewhere off Slauson. Now, if you know anything about LA, right?
Slauson
I
Swap
said,
Meet,
yeah, I
definitely.
said Slauson and what? Because every Slauson cross street got a different hood. And he
Yes.
told me, and I just so happened, the person that I was with for 10 years had lived in that circle and is very familiar with things, right? I'll just leave it there. So I was like, what are you wearing? What activities are you going to be doing? And he just freely started telling me because he felt a little comfortable, it seemed, because he would never tell me anything, just to give you context.
Right.
So as I'm like trying to get what, the color out of him, I just ultimately said, I don't think it's a good idea for you to wear those clothes and that particular hat. And I had to educate him why. And he was like, you seem to know a whole lot. And that's in my gut. I literally had in my thought, like, this is a time, Takesha, where you need to tell him where you're from in terms of how you grew up so that maybe he can open up more and trust you more.
Right.
So I said, the reason why I know so much is that I'm originally from Compton. That my slang language is different. He was like, this makes so much mother loving sense. He started cutting up. So then he was like, tell me more, what I'm supposed to wear, what I'm not supposed to wear. Like, put me up on game, right? Yeah. What's crazy is when this kid came back from holiday break, it was almost a new kid. Like he was receptive to treatment because I was able to get to know him on a deeper level. Yeah. So to us in the clinical world with ethics, there's a time and a place to disclose. And also you got to be mindful what to disclose. I'm not going to disclose my whole life. And I'm saying that because we've seen clips sometimes about too much disclosure. And then the person gets upset when the people who are listening to the disclosure start asking questions about the disclosure. Shut them out.
Even, I just think about what we were taught. For one thing, let me just, I'm looking at our colors and I'm like, that's hilarious. Anyway, like
on the left and on the right.
Right. I was like, oh, okay, but we coming together. Okay. Made me think about Michael Jackson. I was like, I'm bad. I don't know why, anyway, if you understand, you understand. But we were taught in self-disclosure that we only self-disclose in the benefit of the client, right? Not because we just want to talk. And so when we see her do sessions, like those sessions are like, you're just overly disclosing because you want to speak about your own stuff, right? You want to think when a client asks, and we've had clients, of course, we used to work with teenagers. So they asked us any question about our personal lives. It was part of like connecting and being nosy. And we had to make a distinction between which one was going on, right? And how do I want to respond to what they're actually asking, and you want to understand more. So why are they asking, right? Like, why are you like so curious about maybe where I grew up at, right? Why are you so curious about, one of my clients asked me, was I a virgin, right? Like, whoa, that's deep. I know I was young, but, but then it was like, okay, but why is that question being asked? Are you thinking about something? What's going on for you? Do you think at my age, is it possible? Do you feel it's not possible, right? These are things that we're able to like now go further in exploration with the client to help, build more connections, right? In their brain on how to process. Like processing is part of therapy, so they get to that point that they can process these things where there's no other safe place for them to talk through these things, right? All they have is their friend who's gonna say, yeah, girl, do it. You be like, wait, I really didn't want to, but now I didn't got caught into doing something, right? But allow yourself, it doesn't matter what your decision is, right? We're not guiding people's decision making. We're helping them to think. And not as there's not enough time in our lives that we allow thinking to occur. That's even now, right? Like, no matter how old you are, allow yourself to process, how does it feel on this side? How does it feel on this side? And that's what, we help people through.
Yeah. So I'm gonna give everybody a little assignment. Let's be clear. See, this is a proper disclaimer. I am not your therapist, but I am an educator. And one of the things that I have taught youth in the juvenile correctional facilities first, because it started with high schoolers, and then I started bringing it into adulthood, is I don't know is not an option. Okay. So my office used to be a jail cell. Okay, that's not fun. And what I used to do with the boys primarily is, I would decorate it, but there was right by their little chair, there was a bright orange sheet of paper. And it said, I typed it out because honestly, I got tired of them saying they don't know. And I'm not talking about their case, I'm talking about mental health conversations. They don't know really means, as Dr. Roche said, they don't want to process, and some of them don't know how to process. And I'm talking about teenagers because grown people that are watching this video were once teenagers, and sometimes we don't emotionally evolve, and it hurts our relationships and things like that. And so I recall a time where the kids would be saying, I don't know a lot, and I got to the point where, Dr. Roche, I would just do this. And at first they were like, why are you doing that? And I was like, turn around to the right slightly, and I need you to read that little sheet of paper, right? And I put like a smirk, little happy face or whatever, like, kind of thing. And it said, I don't know is not an answer. Please stop and think. Please, right? And over time, what they started to recognize was that they were either uncomfortable with thinking, they didn't know where their thinking was going to go. And a lot of them did not, especially as Black and brown young men in jail, right? They ain't even sat for their case yet. I'm talking about juvenile hall, then into juvenile camp. They did not know, a lot of them, when they were able to talk eventually, how they were going to handle what was going on inside of them, meaning it's like Pandora's box and they don't know how to put back the lid. Now that's our job. And our job is to help them feel safe to put back on the lid. But most, even adults, we don't want to talk. We don't want to disclose even to our closest friends and family because we don't know what's going to happen when we start unraveling. And that leads to people also not going to therapy. Okay. So this is beautiful because it's like organic. It's like intertwining with like all the questions. So let's go to this one. Defensiveness. Okay. Defensiveness. So this is what's probably going on right now online with all the clips. Defensiveness is ruining her case.
Mm-hmm.
Her responses reflects poorly and takes away from, as you had mentioned, she actually is giving maybe good suggestions, good tips. In therapy, we don't actually give advice, but I guess in life coaching, maybe you do. I don't know. But she may be on to something, but unfortunately, because she's very defensive with the way in which she responds and the words that she chooses to use in our world called haughty attitude, it puts like a barrier between to us, her, and the public, because now we're not even focused on the message, we're focused on your presentation. And so let's talk about this as providers with how we deal with frustration as human beings, women that are professional from the hood still.
Yeah.
But we still show up with poise and we show up not letting people push our damn butts like that, even if it's on record.
Right. I mean, what was so interesting, particularly around the second time when she was able to speak up about it, I was like, still nobody came in and gave you like some feedback on how to do this. And one of the things, and now we've seen multiple clips of her like really having emotion dysregulation, right? I feel like, she doesn't know how to regulate her emotions. And that's one of the key areas, I would say, as being a therapist, right? Is emotion expression, but also how to regulate those emotions in the appropriate times. And so when I'm looking at her, I'm like, what is going on with your regulation skills? Like, why would you think that it was appropriate, to even use, it's not even the curse words itself, right? But we know when something has some heat coming, with the curse word. And it's like, why are you doing that? And then why are you also trying to act as if like, I didn't actually say that, y'all just heard wrong, and that's like, wait a minute, like, that's not how you operate when you're with people, and so that defensiveness made it look worse, right? Like, and actually it has ruined her messaging, right? So whatever was helpful that she was saying, she has followers and different things. So it doesn't mean that she was not helpful, in the world. She could have been a lot more helpful just being honest and transparent. I want to put and transparent, about what's going on, and so she was on some huge platforms and, curse words were the thing that she decided that she wanted to say, and I remember when I was younger, now this is like old school thinking, but like, my dad and stuff like that used to say like, non-intelligent people use curse words, right? Like it was like part of a thing. Like there are other ways to say what you're feeling without doing that. And even I just think about even professionally, you know how when we, just this is more of a joke, but like when your manager is like getting on you or something like that, and you like, per our last email, you know what I'm saying? Like you speak in a certain way that's professional, but it still is being like, F you or whatever. Like it's those words, it's not those exact words, but it could be the same sentiment in a professional way. So just knowing like how to present yourself professionally is so important. Even if you are trying to tell somebody off, right? Even if you are trying to defend yourself from whatever something is happening, like be mindful of like how this may be perceived by other people who are not in the room with you, right? Maybe the people in the room understood it, right? Be mindful of how clips are going to happen, particularly in this world that we have today. So you want to be like just mindful of what am I saying, and how is this going to come across to other people,
And everything is recorded with the clip I sent you yesterday. Like, let me just say this before I'm gonna do storytelling time, but you have to assume whenever it's the red record button, even if they say it's not going to be publicized, the fact that it's recorded means that they will use it if there becomes a situation. And something that I sent Dr. Roche yesterday was just like, I can't believe that it got that deep with even other people still online, even though it wasn't supposed to make it to the public eye. Like, how could you allow your, what we call nervous system to be triggered like that? And we don't know what people's days are. Sometimes we carry in baggage from like other conversations, right? But I used to teach like the men specifically when I did a lot of couples work. I would tell them, listen, you had a bad day at work or you tired and you frustrated. I need you to learn how to emotionally detach from your job before you walk into your house, because your children and your wife don't understand what's been happening at your job, nor do they deserve the backlash from whatever happened with you and your boss. That's not their problem. That's not their fault.
It's called
displacement. Exactly. And you should not be walking into your bathroom just locking yourself in. You know what I'm saying? So when you brought that up, I thought about what happened at Argosy. So I'm gonna shed some light on this, and it's not about Argosy, it's about representation, because I keep hearing Eli Pope from Scandal like, you got to be twice as good, right? And as I was getting prepared for today, I didn't realize as we were having these conversations that there was an incident that happened in Argosy. And looking back, our whole student government body were people of color, right? So to give y'all some context, we were sitting on student body, especially during, like I was on student body since I think my sophomore year of Argosy. The last year I was the president. And so it was me, Dr. Roche, both Black, African-American. It was our friend Allison. She was from, oh my God, what's the name of the country?
Ooh, I can't remember right now either. And I've been there.
Bermuda. Okay,
yeah.
From Bermuda. And then Dr. Millie, Latina, El Salvadorian, is actually from Compton, but went to school in LA, South Central, Crenshaw, whatever, right? So we all make up the student body. Speed things up. What happened is, Dr. Roche mentioned this on the last one, there's a pot of money with any student government because funds are taken out of student tuition for every college, even for a profit, to go toward activities for students. So we're in charge of creating those. We decided to keep up with what had been done previously to do like a Christmas party. And so what tends to happen with these Christmas parties, like think about when you go to a wedding or a job, they will give you tickets for alcoholic consumption. Now think about why they would do that. They don't want somebody getting belligerent, but what people do is they sip before they come to the party. So as the president is doing the intro with the microphone, and then we have all these people coming up to talk, and to cap things off, there are people bringing people. That's where the problem is. There are people bringing their friends from other grad schools, from internship sites. We don't know who's in the room. It's about over 100 people in the room, right? So it was what's considered the underclassmen. I think it was their first year there. And we were cool with them up to that point because I was actually their TA in assessment, like psychological testing. So we noticed that they were like belligerent drunk. One girl was doing like a ventriloquist something or whatever, showing off her skill set. And they came and snatched the mic from the girl and start drunk singing. And we all looking at each other, to be honest, we didn't know what to do because we were like, we don't want to embarrass these people, but we also don't want to let our nervous system, because if somebody put their hands on me, I don't know how my cool gonna be. I'm gonna try my best.
We know how to act. We still know how to act when we need to.
And that's why I chose not to. I had just said, let's do a tap on the shoulder like we do with kids. Because if I say, give me the mic, and we get into a conversation on the mic, it's gonna turn bad. So speed things up. The following Monday, we find out through rumors that these students there's no problem with this. They got a room at the venue. The problem is apparently they got a keg and they got hella drunk before they came to the event. Again, no shade on drinking, right? Just handle your liquor. So I thought this was very fascinating. And I don't know if you know the inside of this. Our dean at the time, which had said some inappropriate comments to me, the whole Ebonics thing. This dean, I remember in our class had said, I don't see what the big deal is. I think her kid was in law school or something. These kids get drunk all the time. You know, they in college. And I told her, along with us as student government, y'all, we thought integrity and reputation, even back then, before we understood marketing, was so important. But working twice as hard is what the theme was, though, because we knew how it would impact people of color. These people who were acting up, I'm going to be real, they were not of color. Okay.
They live in a privileged world. So not our world.
So how we saw the impact, because we didn't know how to address it initially, what triggered we got to go talk to them is that we start noticing that people at sites that either we were applying to for internship or to practicum, or that we were already at, and we were at one of the high schools. They were like, oh, I heard y'all had a lit party. These they were drunk. You know what I'm saying? Right. And so I'm like, oh my gosh. And so they said, oh, my supervisor know, because they just like gossiping at the sites. And I'm thinking, wow, these students got to apply for their first year of practicum next year. And the problem is their names are being thrown around. So do y'all know that when we went around to these classrooms, to bring it back full circle to this conversation, is that they got defensive and said, we have no right giving them feedback, even though we're upperclassmen. What's the big deal out of how we reacted and how we were responding? It was a party. And then the dean of non-color also backed it up to some of us in class and said, it's not a big deal. And I pushed back and I said, it is a big deal, because I wasn't talking about being Black, but I just said people like us are now going to be judged based off of one goddamn person. And do you know, they still didn't understand it and they still didn't care. And so I just wanted to bring that back full circle, because that goes back to what a lot of people were saying. Like, one bad apple can ruin it for how people see our industry. And that's why therapists are in an uproar, because it's not just inappropriate language, like using word therapy, therapist, and patient. It's how you're making the mental health field look, because your connection based off of what you said in the past is you were passing yourself off as a MFT in training, a therapist. And PS to the public, if you're an MFT in training postgraduate, you have to have an associate number, or back then an intern number. And the fact that I showed y'all how to go on Board of Behavioral Sciences in the state of California and she cannot be found, that means that she was talking online about being a MFT in training, but she was actually still in grad school.
Yeah,
that's not even
so crazy. Just in shifting the dynamic, because I don't know if we'll ever come back to do this, but it makes me think of like con artists, right? And at first, and I was never like, I wasn't thinking like that in the very beginning, but the more stuff that keeps on coming out, I was like, was she legitly like this is a real con artist situation? It made me think about Netflix, like Inventing Anna. I don't know if anybody ever seen that, or like even the Tinder swindler. Like, there'll be people that be really like out here conning people and can get, get money and get big places and get popularity. And I'm like, is she doing that? And this is not me saying that she is. Y'all gonna say in the comments what y'all feel. Okay. But
when other people have said it for us, we're just stating what we see.
Right. Yeah. But I'm just like, wow, this is like some real like con thing. It's like, it feels like, what do we do about the like what diagnosis is happening in front of us? Right. It does give pimperish pastor. Yes. Like it's given that, for real. Like, how did you, you just making stuff up? Like, who does that? Like, I've never seen it so strong, I guess, to somebody that felt so close. I mean, not that she's close to me, but like, she's more touchable than some of the other like situations that I've ever seen before. And I'm just like, wow, like this person has legitimately like conned this many people, right? And got this much notoriety. I'm like, this is just a mess. But like, I know we only got a little bit more time. How many more questions we got, girl?
Well, I'm gonna bring up your favorite. Okay. So this is the one you've been waiting on. I know that I did a whole thing on honorary in terms of people should disclose transparently that they have an honorary, just so y'all know. But a lot of people are saying the confusion about the title doctor. We know the trademark thing exists, but the trademark is only for the trademark, not a license or anything like that. And people are now becoming confused of how people are using doctor in a non-medical context. And so certificates on the wall, there has been a lot of pictures and videos about a snapshot of her having all of these. They look like mayor certificates, right? A whole lot of certificates. But when I actually look and like pinch in, what I don't see, again, is like something like this,
Right,
right?
right.
Like an actual degree. So can you speak on what your views on, and then also what we should transparently be doing when somebody does earn an honorary doctorate of some sort?
Yeah, so this is I have actually gotten this question like several times in my life. I would say in the last like maybe like 5 to 10 years, there's been maybe an increase of what I have known about like honorary doctorates. Like I felt like there were honorary doctorates before. It's not that they didn't exist, but it just seems like a lot more people, right? The honorary doctorate was really made for people who, I guess had certain types of level of celebrity, you know what I mean? Like Oprah or something like that. Like that made sense to me that, oh, okay, they got this honorary doctorate, right? But guess what? They didn't even use it. They just had it as one of like their awards or accomplishments. But it wasn't something that they use on their day-to-day basis. And what I have noticed, like more of like an upward trend, is people getting honorary doctorates and using them. And now these schools are supposedly accredited and all these kinds of things that are giving these honorary doctorates. But what I do know is that they pay for them. So you make a decision to say, hey, I want an honorary doctorate. You pay the money that it costs to do it, and you may use it for marketing purposes, right? But I feel like it's extremely, extremely, extremely misleading for you to be calling yourself a doctor and you have not earned the doctorate, right? Now, I have some conflict around it because I have some good people around me who have honorary doctorates, and some of them are using it, some of them are not, really using the honorary doctorate. And what I will say is these particular people have mastered, right? Because that's what when you think of a person who has a doctorate degree, they have mastered based on training and hours of doing a certain type of work. They've mastered how to do something. And so that's why they should be getting, or I don't know if it's should probably not the right word, but that's why they, are able to get the honorary doctorates, because they did master certain things. And I know tons of people in the like marketing and business space who have done amazing things in their world, right? And so, and I believe that I've seen them spend hours and hours and hours of training. They've been able to also train other people to have success. And so I do believe that they are successful and they should be noticed for their success. But I'm like, there needs to be another name that's not doctor, right?
I'm gonna pull
Because
this up while you're talking so they can follow along. Go ahead, keep going. I'm gonna
okay.
pull something up as you're talking so that people can understand the context.
Yeah. And so I just don't believe people should be it should be called doctor, right? And and I struggle in this area because I actually have an earned doctorate degree, that I struggle with the idea of being able to even call those people doctor. Right. And these are people who I like love and I care about, and I've seen the work that they've done, and I truly believe that they are great at what they do. So this is not like a level of hating on people who have honorary doctorates, because I see it. I just have conflict with it because I feel like the community and the public, they don't have any opportunity when you're starting to call yourself a doctor to check it out, or to, they just believe you, right? Because people just think people are honest. That's what we hope for, right? That people are just honest and transparent. So there should be some type of way that they either, like I said, call themselves a different name, right? Or they make sure that they're very clear in their documentation that they have this person, when somebody's doing this, like if you're hosting and there's somebody is introducing you, then you should say, this person has earned their honorary doctorate degree. Here comes Dr. So-and-so. You can say that if you have now put in that statement, honorary doctorate degree. But to go out here and have like just even marketing materials or flyers out here that's saying that you're a doctor now is just extremely misleading. And they have because we have ethical boards, they have no supervision for like saying that they, really, really, truly earned this, right? Yeah. How do I know you're successful? Just because you said you were successful, right? Who else said that, about you? So I really have a lot of conflict when it comes down to honorary doctorate degrees. I absolutely hate it, and only because I've earned it, that it makes me not like it so much,
Well, these days it diminishes the actual work that people have put in. Again, circling it back to the uproar with the mental health community, and really the part about transparency, people not acknowledging, per what I brought up, that was from like APA and stuff website, is people need to disclose without being asked. That's the
Right.
transparent part Dr. Roche keeps saying.
Yeah.
You need to voluntarily say it's honorary and not
Yes.
just say that you're a doctor on a flyer, because most people aren't going to ask, but you
Right.
need to say it.
Right, exactly. And then just to be like, just for an extra funny, I'm like, I don't even know if she even got one of those, right? Because even the people that I have seen who have honorary doctorates, they be having pictures of with their degrees and pictures of them actually graduating. I've actually seen them in, our whole like get up in garment and everything, So I just like, did she even got that? She don't even have to show up. She ain't got a picture. Like, girl, what you ain't got nothing. Okay.
Let me put this on the board. So somebody said, unfortunately, the layperson may not know the difference between MD, PhD, and PsyD. And this is why
I'm honorary. We're adding the other component, right? Like
this is
MD
honorary, but also
legit,
public.
Earned, right? PhD legit, earned. PsyD legit and earned. Those are earned, but honorary, right, is not something that is earned in like an actual like school, right, that told you what classes to take, that told you where to go for internship, that told you to complete this many hours, that told you to complete a dissertation. None of that happens with the honorary doctorate degree. It's just a random body of people who come together and say, yeah, you paid us, cool, we're going to give you this degree. So that's not the same.
We're gonna honor you.
We're gonna honor you. That's what it means, So I don't like how misleading it is. And I think that, and those who have it, no shade to you in having it. This is more of an opinion situation for me. It's just that be clear with the public on what type of doctorate degree that you have, and don't flaunt around. Because a lot of these people, I think they're very intelligent and they are definitely capable of getting a doctorate degree if they wanted to, but that's not what you have. That's not what you chose to do.
Yeah. And somebody brought up a good question. I think this comes up a lot in the comments, and I'll just state a general disclaimer. A lot of people are asking, is it unethical? Should we report it? Well, when something comes down to being unethical, let's just talk about the mental health world, the word unethical versus illegal, is that we tend to have to look at things according to our ethical board in our state, according to our licensing board, right? And so even though our field has been impacted, kind of like therapy, I would need to do a thorough background check and intake per se to really know what should be reported or not. However, if individuals are harmed by a particular individual, they are the ones that should be supported. And I'm going to say ask for help for someone else, including an attorney, to be able to see if what happened to them, not what happened to the mental health field, right? But because if something happened to them, this is how our ethics board came about. If y'all recall, if you attended our last live stream, when bad things happen, it is a patient who has made a report to the board or to their local authorities. It then turns into, in the past, has made it to our textbooks, a lawsuit. Yeah. Then when it turns into a lawsuit, that's when the whole mental health community, the people that make the decisions, decide, you know what, we're just going to make this the next ethical code 11.3 for everybody, because there's one damn person messed up or whatever. And it's a process. And so I'm just going to say, we can't just go online and say she unethical. You have to define what unethical is in order for an investigation to open up. Similar to, we can't go to a police station and say, I think somebody did something. They're gonna be like, where's the proof? It ain't gonna go to court. They cannot get us a piece.
Well, then if you're not licensed, you're technically not even under an ethical board, right?
And that's what I wanted to say on YouTube, because that's what people aren't understanding. That is also the uproar again, is like, well, who are we gonna report her to outside of the police?
Yes.
Like, for real, when you think about it, there is no Board of Behavioral Sciences in California for the MFT, Marriage and Family Therapy license. There is no Board of Psychology in California for a psychologist, PhD or PsyD. There is nothing. And so this is the unfortunate part, which becomes a question where I would say people who have been harmed per se, you need to seek an attorney, because there is no board you can actually call to make a report.
Right. I mean, but you have to be, and I would say this is from a legal standpoint, especially maybe if you worked with her or something like that, is like, did you sign anything that had informed consent, right? And so the reality is that you can assume somebody meant something that maybe they actually did not say, right? I mean, of course, they using the term doctor, but maybe we assume that meant license. Maybe we assume that meant psychologist, right? And if she did not directly say that, then it's not even like a legal situation, right? So it depends on like how she was presenting herself. And I'm talking about the people who were harmed. And I feel like the person that would be harmed would be somebody who paid her money, right? To actually go and see her. Another way that we know that this wasn't right is, there's confidentiality, right? That happens when we are working with the client, but there's an area called privacy that's also like, a part of it, right? Like, and we try not to breach privacy. And privacy is like a client sliding in our DM saying that they're interested in doing work.
Say that again.
Right. Right. Like if they slide in my DM and they ask, like what are your prices, or how do I start work with you? And I decide to share that publicly, then I'm breaching the level of privacy, you know what I mean, as well. And so we try not to do things like that. We don't do those kinds of things. We're not going to be out at a restaurant or at dinner and talking about who trying to work with us. We wouldn't do those kinds of things, right? So those things are like very harmful to people who are even trying to work with you. And so it's like that you're worried about name dropping, letting people know that people want to work with you is what your goals are in that moment, right? But you didn't ask them for permission to say that, to even say that to other people. And so that right there, like they could have said it on their platforms. Hey, I'm thinking about, working with so-and-so, but you shouldn't have been the one saying, that you're going to work with so-and-so. I mean, even part of our work is that if we saw a client out in the streets, we
I was just thinking about that.
we saw, we worked in clients in the, in high schools, right? And so in high school, we may see the client, just around the school, part of our privacy would make sure that we wouldn't even acknowledge that we even knew the client. Right? Not even how we knew them, we won't acknowledge you at all. We would tell them, if I see you out in the street, you know what I'm saying? I'm not even going to acknowledge. I see you at the grocery store. I'm not going to acknowledge that I even know you. And I'm letting you know that so you don't feel some type of way about it. But that's for me to keep things private for you, and I'm protecting you. Now, if you would like to disclose it, if you want to run up into me and be like, hey, everybody, this is my therapist, which is most our clients would do, because, you know what I'm saying? If we make it exciting to have a therapist, people like, what? You got a hood therapist, black therapist? What? Now they want to be a part of it. But that was up to the client if they chose to make that to disclose that. But that's something too that was like a clear like red flag, like what you doing now?
Well, I mean, and you bring up something, and somebody had put it in the box, and I think this is a bigger concern for the public, is that they don't know what they don't know, right? And so again, I cannot stress how important it is, if you are a service provider watching or listening to this, it is your job to disclose things and teach the public of what should and should not happen. We have running into kids at the mall and at the movies. We have posting people online dancing saying we're embracing the culture. I'm sorry, we're not going to even go into that like in deep right now, but it's along the same lines. We have to do better as providers to set like a boundary line where, even though this seems cool to do in 2026, because our eras are different, right? And we know that. At the same time as the world is evolving, there are things, as Dr. Roche had said, that should just remain private. And that also, go back to that word transparency. You need to start volunteering information and education to certain groups. I'm not just talking about ethnicity. Dr. Roche was talking about age group, because they don't understand things the way that even adults understand privacy. Like, I don't want nobody to know that I got a therapist, even though you don't. Kids don't understand that. And to be honest, I recall we weren't even given those disclaimers until we start laughing in supervision, because I was going to the movies every Friday in Richmond. And it was one kid I kept running into with his girlfriend every Friday. It became so awkward where when we came back to session, he would never say anything, but you can tell it was a pink elephant in the room. So I decided to take that transparent moment and say, listen, you ain't talking about it. Let's talk about it. I done seen you at the movie like 3 weeks in a row, young man. And you look like you want to say something to me, but he already know where I stand on confidentiality as well. And so he said, well, I just don't know how to address you. Well, let's talk about it. Well, guess what we did as a culture, because we share it with colleagues, is we said, hey, this came up with our client in supervision, et cetera. So how about all of us start educating the kids and parents on what was going to happen if I see you in public? So it became a part of our intake process, where, especially working in Richmond and even in Compton, I would say, if I see you at the mall in San Francisco and you see me, but I don't see you, what you going to do? And the kids literally say, oh, I'm going to run up to you. I'm going to give you a hug. And I'm like, if you choose to do that, that's fine. But what's going to happen if I ignore you? Oh, I'm going to be pissed. These are good conversations to have. And the kid said, I'm going to be pissed. And I said, you have a right to be pissed, but let me educate you and tell you why I'm not talking to you. You have to initiate that conversation.
Yeah.
So going back to this, educate the public. And again, if y'all have more questions about the therapeutic process, we can do a whole nother live stream on that because it's much needed. And we're happy that y'all finally listening. And I don't mean to say that.
Can I respond to something that's in the chat? I don't know if you see
go ahead.
it.
Let me pull it up.
Yeah. But it's the one that says, I think your co-host was dishonest, right? Let me tell you something, when, how to answer something. So I'm actually happy that you put this in the comment, in the chat, because now I can answer it, versus you just like, feeling certain type of way and not being, and not understanding it. Okay. So I don't know this person. I don't know Cheyenne. Okay. I don't know her. But I did meet her. And so like, let me just be clear. Like, and I said that on the last one, I did meet her and I felt like she was like extremely warm and approachable in the time that I met her. And, we had like a little kiki in the moment, in that, at that time frame. I wouldn't reference myself as starstruck, right? But she was somebody who I saw as an influencer online. There were a lot of people that were there. And so I had a desire to say, hey girl, because what I like is I'm a Black woman celebrator. It's who I am just naturally. Right. And so when I see other Black women, right. And I see other people who are like doing things, and what I assume, I didn't go check her credentials either. Sorry. Right. I know better now, but I didn't check her credentials either. What I ended up doing was I just assumed she was a licensed clinical psychologist, just like other people who present themselves as that. I believed, I was duped, right? Bamboozled, just like everybody else, and in the fact that I had seen her around when I just had, people, were having me look at her interviews or whatever the case is. And then I saw her in real life. I was really just maybe shocked at how like approachable she was being. Right. Because I didn't think that she was going to be like that, honestly, that she was going to be like, oh, talk forever. OK, girl, let me see what's going on. But you got a Doctoral chain, she's like, I want a big chain like yours. Like it was like a lot of that was happening. So she was very cool. And so that's why, I'm really big on like, I don't want to just super hate on the girl. Right. But she is lying. That's just is the truth. That's just the fact of what happened. I'm just saying when I met her in person, she didn't present as like something was wrong. Right. As she didn't present to something was wrong to everybody else either.
Yeah. So I think, this has definitely opened up a larger conversation that needs to happen. You mentioned it, and I want to maybe schedule another live stream, put a one in the chat box if y'all would want us to do this, is to actually walk you through with the whole transparency, privacy, what the therapeutic process should look like. It doesn't matter the age, but we can talk about how it looks different between children, adolescents, and then adults, and then maybe even couples. But what should the vetting process look like on both ends, not just for you to call a therapist and say, I want a therapist, but for you to ask proper questions, what that can look like. And then maybe even some red flags to pay attention to, because just like I would say as a parent, and in this day and age, we don't choose providers based off a list unless it's an emergency. Most of the time, including if you go through your insurance, us as parents or individuals, we go to the dentist website and we want to see a picture because we want to know, do you look approachable or like a creep? But let's be real. Let's use real language. When I look at a pediatrician for my child, I don't like when Kaiser sends me a list. I actually want to see photos. Not that I'm looking, some people are looking for a particular provider, but I'm just curious. That's the world we live in, is pictures and videos. Okay.
Yeah.
And so with that in mind, I do want to continue this conversation because people are willing to listen to something that's always been there.
Yeah.
But it hasn't been as juicy. And we know, I hope that this ain't true, but I'm gonna call a spade a spade. We know that those videos, those live streams, those conversations are not going to probably do as well as these conversations, but it needs to do as well.
Right.
It needs to be shared as much, because if not, people, especially people of color, are going to continue to not know how to find the right provider. Right. And then they're going to open up their Pandora's box. Something may or may not go wrong. And then what happens when something goes wrong? You don't want to open up to nobody else. Well, what has that solved? You know?
Exactly.
So I definitely want to.
That's what I'm happy that the shift is going to happen, that people are going to start, paying attention to who's talking to you, checking out their credentials, making sure that's the case, right? Because, we all were, I don't know her. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm saying. I met her, met
Yeah,
and knowing.
different.
Very, very, very different. Very, very different. I ain't sliding her DM. She ain't sliding in mine. Okay. We ain't even close like that. But you know, she was a cool person when I met her, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're gonna wrap up. I'll put our social media stuff on I'm about to say the board, like I'm teaching Lord. But I'm Dr. TK. You can find me at Instagram at Dr. TK Psych. This is Dr. Roche. You can find her also on Instagram. Once this queues up, you can also find her on YouTube if you just search her name. I think it's Dr. Roche Brown.
Yes.
On YouTube. Yeah. So check her out. I know she's gonna start talking more about financial literacy on her page. But just again, as a disclaimer, the difference between YouTube and in-depth discussions and Instagram, where there's a 30-second clip, make sure that when you all are listening to anyone's information, that when you choose to respond versus allowing your nervous system to backlash on people who you don't hear the whole story, make sure before you talk that you go to the platform that this clip is coming from and you actually watch the whole video. And if you don't feel like it, you need to tell AI to summarize it. It does it on the bottom of YouTube because we are in a state of emergency where you need to be educated. YouTube gives y'all the summary. You know what I'm saying? And so I just say this because I want us to start being well educated. And I want us as a people, and especially people of color, to start asking better questions and not just under attack, which means that we need to take our time and educate ourselves. And we should not just be consuming gossip. We should be consuming information to grow us. And that's why we're here. All right. So we want to thank y'all from the bottom of our hearts for coming out again to join the beautiful Black Psychologists. We want to bring this back at least every month, but I saw a lot of ones though. So we are going to figure out a date. I will announce it on social media and on YouTube. So make sure that you subscribe to the channel.
We're going to be in person with each other real soon. We're going to see what we can do.
Oh, so Instagram, check our stories because that's where we usually like go along with us and with other therapists in person in New York.
So we'll do some stuff and you'll see us side by side for real.
Okay? Yeah. All right, y'all. Love y'all. Have a great Memorial Day weekend. Get some rest. And we will talk to y'all in the next one. Bye, y'all.
We don't call her doctor.